Hey everyone! Welcome back to Literary Ramblings. I'm Corrie,
And I'm Charlotte.
and this is the podcast where we talk about all the books that we read. I mean, not all of them, but all of the ones we read together. So every
Yes.
month we go back and forth. So every other month I get to pick a book, and every other month Charlotte picks a book, and then we read it similar paces, and then we talk about it here.
We save
I,
all our thoughts for you.
yeah, mostly. We talk a little bit outside of this, but
Yeah.
you
It's
know,
gotten less and less as we've gone on.
yes, it has. Because we want to save our thoughts. I
Yeah.
will, there was something that I was going to ask you, in advance about this book, and then now I can't remember. We read Cold Storage by David Koepp. Cope. Cool.
Something. We
Yeah, that'll be a good one. And I just realized that we didn't do any kind of icebreaker or actually talk about anything else yet. At the beginning of podcasts, you're supposed to talk about things that show your personality and who you are so that people will be interested in you as a person and thus they will listen to your podcast. And Charlotte and I are both really bad at that because we don't
well
have personalities, apparently.
that's exactly it. I mean, I took a personality test at work and that's what it said. You're a blank slate.
Real?
No. No,
There's
of
just
course
nothing
not.
there. There's just not a thought behind our eyes.
No, it said I was a collaborator, so shout out to the predictive index and the 17 personality types you can fall into.
I think when I took 16 is that the one? The 16
No,
personalities, the Myers-Briggs? No.
nope,
I didn't think collaborator was on there. I've
nope.
taken the Myers-Briggs one, and I'm a moderator.
Mm. That's why
So
you're hosting the podcast?
I guess I'm just naturally this charismatic, enigmatic. I don't actually know what enigmatic means. I should.
Mysterious.
Oh, good. I'm that too, for sure. I'm
Definitely.
actually just stupid, but I prefer enigmatic.
You're
'Cause if
not.
you're stupid and you don't open your mouth, people think you're mysterious.
And that is kind of a hack. I'll give you that. Just don't say anything. People will assume the best.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was the protagonist on that one. So
Yeah, so if anybody listening to this wants to go and check that out, we're not sponsored because
we're not sponsored.
we're not important enough for that. Self-deprecating humor is on point for me today.
Yep. We're on a roll.
Yeah, I guess if you are familiar with the Myers-Briggs personality test, that might tell you something about us. I don't know. I haven't looked at it in a really long time. I remembered what I was because I have had to look it up a couple of different times. Because sometimes my friends will talk about it and I'll be like, oh yeah, I took that. And then I'll have to go hunt through my email and find the test that I took in 2017.
That's exactly what I did today. It was like, oh yeah, I took that other one in 2020. Let me just go scroll through.
Yeah, it's been a minute. So I did like that one. I feel like that's one of the better personality tests.
It's
I
at
think
least
it's
more fun.
yeah, and I feel like I read that it is actually based on some kind of science,
They all
at
say
least on
that.
other surveys. Yeah, well, they don't want you to know that some of them are just based on nothing. They're just like, I was just sitting in my room one day and I wrote a personality test. This is who you are. It's like,
I do like that
okay.
the 16 personalities gives you which like movie and TV characters and stuff you'd be.
Oh
So
yeah, I do like that too. I can't
yeah,
remember any of mine.
mine was Morpheus from The Matrix
Nice.
or Laurel Lance from Arrow. Less
I can't
nice.
remember. I can't remember which character that is. It has been so long since I've watched the first two seasons of that show.
Well, now I feel terrible for bringing it up because we're supposed to watch it together.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that the name sounds vaguely familiar. I feel like I know who she is, or I'm supposed to know who she is.
She's the lawyer character. Oliver's love interest.
Oh, yeah. I did not like her.
I know.
I hope
Neither
she
did I.
dies. Hope she dies in later seasons. Charlotte and I in
Why are you
college were
spoiling
like,
things?
I don't know. I don't know if she dies or not. I said I hope she dies.
Oh, said she hope.
So
Okay.
you're spoiling things, I
No, I
guess.
don't. I have no idea.
I don't know either. Okay, listen. Charlotte and I in college, we both really liked Arrow, and so both of us had watched the first season, and I can't remember if we watched parts of season 2 together or
I think
not,
we did.
but we've definitely both seen through season 2. And then for some reason, I can't remember. I think it was me. It was probably me. I said, "We should watch the rest of the seasons together." And then we both moved multiple states away from each other, like almost immediately after that.
Yep.
And so this is where so I buy the previous season of Arrow every year on Black Friday, because every year on Black Friday they would have the previous season for $10, which is pretty good for a set of a whole season of any show to get on DVD. So I would always buy it, and now I have all the seasons because it's no longer running, and Charlotte and I are still in season 2
And we
because
were watching it like when it was current, when it first.
yeah. Yeah, like this was long. I feel very old now.
Someday we'll watch it together.
Maybe.
In the
Well,
nursing
now
home.
at least it's over now. So now when we do it, we can just be like, "Oh yeah, okay." Like now we don't have to it's not like still running. Like we're not going to have to sit down and watch 15 seasons of it.
It didn't turn into Supernatural.
Yeah.
So, on that note,
Yeah, on that note, we're actually probably going to transition into talking about the actual book. So again, cold storage. I don't know if there'll be major spoilers. I don't know if it matters.
it's a horror thing and people die.
Yeah. So there's your spoiler warning. This was my pick, and I picked it because I got an ARC copy at work. So it was free.
Oh.
And then I waited until the mass market paperback came out, and then I picked it for book club so I could buy the copy for Charlotte for like $7. And now we don't have it at work anymore, so I got it at just the right time.
It's very creased as a mass market paperback.
Yeah, mass markets are super duper cheap.
Yeah, because I don't know what I did to it, but it's got like major seams.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to read a mass market. So if you're unfamiliar with types of books, so you're probably familiar with hardback, and then the next size down, like the very first paperback that will come out, is a trade paperback, and that one is about 6x9 usually, and it's just a paperback, and it's 6x9. And then the mass market are the small, like they're usually pretty chubby, they're pretty fat copies of the book, and those are the mass markets, and those are almost always the cheapest option because they're printed the cheapest, but because of the way that they're printed and because they're printed so cheaply and because they tend to be really thick, you really can't read them without creasing them and really messing them up, which is why they're cheap.
Yeah,
But
I tried, but I could not spare it.
yeah, I have the ARCs are usually in trade paperback. So I have a trade paperback one, but our page number is still lined up completely. So
Oh.
I don't know how they accomplished that, but they do. So this is Cold Storage by David Koepp. It's Koepp. So I don't know how to pronounce his name.
I think you're right, putting the emphasis on the P's.
All right. Well, I will read the back of the book for you guys. All right. When Pentagon bioterror operative Roberto Diaz was sent to investigate a suspected biochemical attack, he found something far worse, a highly mutative organism capable of extinction-level destruction. He contained it and buried it in cold storage deep beneath a little-used military repository. Now, after decades of festering in a forgotten sub-basement, the specimen has found its way out and is on a lethal feeding frenzy. Only Diaz knows how to stop it. He races across the country to help two unwitting security guards, one an ex-con, the other a single mother. Over one harrowing night, the unlikely trio must figure out how to quarantine this horror again. All they have is luck, fearlessness, and a mordant sense of humor. Will that be enough to save all of humanity?
Dun dun dun.
Yeah. It came out September in 2019, which is extremely appropriate.
Yeah, he really thought ahead on this.
Yeah. So it's an organism, and I like that they don't actually tell you the organism on the back, because if you said that it was a fungus, I feel like people wouldn't take it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Because every time you say the word fungus, it doesn't sound that serious.
No, it's a fun word to say.
Yeah, I had that problem anytime I was explaining to my friends what I was reading. I'd be like, well, it's about a fungus. And they'd be like, oh.
Yeah, it sounds much better to be like, you know that thing that takes over ants and makes them crawl to their deaths at the top of trees? That.
That's that's what the fungus is. It's a cordyceps.
Mhm.
That's the breed of fungus. And actually, when I was reading it, I forgot, but I remembered at some point that I was like, oh, this has been done before. Because I was like, this feels like a fairly unique idea, but also I don't really do zombies too
Mm.
much. So it's not something I'm super familiar with. But cordyceps was done in the video game The Last of Us.
Oh.
Yeah,
I didn't-
that's what makes them zombies, is a fungal growth that's the cordyceps.
Hmm.
Yeah. I still think this is an interesting take. I cannot remember for the life of me. I'm pretty sure I rated it 3 stars. But I can't remember what I said about it.
I gave it 4 because I really enjoyed it. Although, I honestly, at the beginning, I probably wouldn't have picked this book because I don't normally read horror because I get too stressed out and I just can't
Yeah.
handle it. But once I got past the beginning, it kind of completely changes tone once it jumps to the present.
Does it?
Yeah, because I feel like in the first part it's very suspenseful. There is still humor in the
Yeah,
first part, but it's like super serious. I mean, they're like working
it
for the
is.
government and, they're sent in and I don't think it's a spoiler to say that the scientist that goes in with them does not come back with them,
Yeah, yeah.
which
And they're
underlines
the only, yeah, so there's Roberto and Trini,
it. Mhm.
and they're the two agents that are sent to deal with this fungus the first time.
Mhm.
And they deal with it in Australia in a super small town that only has like 26 people in it.
Yeah.
And then one of the scientists that comes along with them gets a sample of it, but she gets infected with it. And she dies within like 20 minutes.
Not even. More like less than
Yeah.
that. Like 5.
So, yeah. So it kills him pretty quick, but Roberto and Trini are the only two people who saw that happen
Mhm.
and who have like seen the effects of what happens with this organism. So they nuke the town in
Yeah.
Australia. And then they take the sample back and they store it, just like it says on the back of the book.
Mhm.
And they just put it in cold storage. And honestly, I was like, why did you even bring that back?
I mean, Roberto tries to convince them not to.
What does he say though?
He talks to Trini, but she's his boss, so she's like, it's protocol. Like the government requires that whenever they go to one of these scenes or whatever, they bring back samples so they can study it.
Yeah, but see, he doesn't say anything after the scientist dies.
No.
He doesn't say anything. He tries to convince her before the
Mm-hmm.
scientist dies. And then they watch her die. And then I was like, oh, so they probably just walked away, right? They didn't go up to her dead body and take the sample, right? But they did.
No, they did.
And that is
They
that
already had the sample. They didn't go to her dead body and take it.
who was carrying it?
I think Trini was carrying it. It was already locked in that case.
I'm questioning it.
Well, anyway, the beginning is tonally very different because it's like about containment and it's treated as a serious threat. Whereas in the second half of the book, the majority of the time, the people who are interacting with it don't know what it is. So they're not very afraid of it.
Yeah.
And I think that just changes the tone completely, really. Even though I know as the reader what it can do, they kind of like dance around it, you know?
Yeah. Because they don't know anything.
I gave it 4 stars because I really enjoyed it. But I do feel like I'm not 100% in support of that tonal switch. It made it readable for me, but like
Hmm.
I feel like if you were a serious horror fan and you went into this and you wanted to be like scared, it doesn't really accomplish that.
Yeah, no, it definitely doesn't. Although it is just, at least in my story, it is classified as just fiction. It's not classified as horror. But
Mm.
I think that because of that tonal shift that you're talking about, I think that is a fine line that it sort of walks.
Yeah.
Because I think if you did kind of like lessen that tone even just a little bit in the second part, it would be horror.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I would have liked it as much if it was true horror, because I think that it made it just as readable for me too, as it
Yeah.
did for you. Because I also don't read a lot of horror. I did just read last month. I read Books of Blood by Clive Barker, which is a collection of. I read the first volume, which is a collection of 6 short stories, and I rated it a solid 3 out of 5 because I basically didn't really like any of the stories.
Mm.
The first one was just okay.
So you feel like if you didn't like any of those, then you kind of done with the horror genre?
Yeah, well, Clive Barker is like critically acclaimed. I also did try to read a book by Joe Hill, which is Stephen King's son,
Mm.
and didn't get through that one either. So I don't think horror is really the thing for me,
Why didn't you go with
but
Stephen King himself?
because I probably wouldn't like Stephen King. Also, his books are like 7,000 pages long,
They are. It is a
and
commitment. I own
I can't commit.
I own a collection of his, and I've just been carting it around forever. And yeah,
Just
it
never gonna
remains.
read
You
it.
know what though? If you need to stabilize a table or something, I'm just saying it has my back. It serves some purpose.
I guess. Okay, well, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars because I thought it was fine. I did enjoy it for the most part. I liked all the characters. I was surprised that I did. It does that thing that adult fiction tends to do mostly, which is it front loads all the introductions, all the character introductions,
Yeah,
where it tells you everything about them, and then you go in and you're like, okay, that was a little boring. But then, like, it matters later.
it does matter later. And I think he did a good job of doing it though, having now read a decent amount of adult fiction this year.
Yes.
He, has memorable lines. Like with one of them, he starts out by talking about the character is driving around with bodies in his trunk.
Yeah!
And
Which
I was
was,
like,
I feel like a nasty bait and switch, but whatever.
a little bit, but I was also like, this is excellent. Like,
Yeah.
this tells me everything I need to know about this guy.
Yeah. No, I mean it was fair. This book does take place in a very, very condensed period of time. I mean,
Hmm.
it says that on the back, but honestly, I will often read the back of books and then I'll pick them and then it'll be like 4 months before I read them, and I do not reread the back of the book
Me neither.
before I read the book. So I often forget everything that's on the back. Like as I was reading it out loud, I realized how much stuff it actually tells you.
A lot.
A
Yep.
lot. But one thing that I really like about this take on the cordyceps and like the whole like infection thing is that it was really like nobody's fault
Hmm.
that it was no longer contained, which I
Yeah.
think is a really interesting take on it because I can't think of very many like movies or books where something like is contained and then it gets out or whatever, where it's not somebody's fault. Like somebody just goes in and makes like a stupid decision, or it's
Hmm.
like, oh, the rookie pushed the wrong button, or no, you can't go in there. And it's like, well, I have to take out the trash, so I'm gonna go in there because I don't care what you say. And then like whatever it is gets out, and you're just like, that was just dumb. But this one, I love it, and you don't find out right away that it's nobody's fault. But I do love that it's nobody's fault because essentially what happened is the organism, it wasn't in a cold enough storage to like stop growing and mutating.
Hmm.
So it just really slowly mutated over a decade.
I mean, I guess you could argue that the government could have done a better job containing it, in that they could have, like,
They
added
could have set it on
extra.
fire.
Yeah, they could have destroyed it, but they also could have done more about, if they knew they weren't going to research it, like, why didn't they just destroy it?
See, that's what really annoys me about it. And I know that it probably happens all the time in real life where they take samples and they don't get to them for 40 years. But it really irritates me that they were told how serious it was and
Hmm.
they were only believed by one guy, which was their
Yeah.
basically immediate higher up. But they were like, they have enough power that when they tell a government that they need to nuke a town on their country, they just do it.
Hmm.
But then they don't have enough power for them to be like, hey, this is an extremely dangerous thing. Like, we just nuked a town
Hmm.
because of this organism. Can we, like, get proper storage for it? And they're like, I don't know. Best I can do is the basement. And it's like, what do you mean?
I mean, it did
Like,
work for 40 years, so that's
no, it
something.
worked for 16 years.
Well,
And it didn't
you only
really
find
work
that out
for
at the
that
very
long.
end.
Yeah, but it didn't even really work for that long. That's just how long it took the organism to get out of the room.
Mm-hmm.
Because it got out of its test tube, like,
Pretty
I
quickly.
don't remember. It gives you the whole timeline of how
Well,
long it really takes. But
it's pretty slow until it gets out of the test tube.
yeah. But it never like stopped. And so it's just like, I don't know. I love that aspect of it, but then at the same time, there are things that like didn't really like feel
And
like they added up.
when it says only Diaz knows how to stop it, it's like, no, anyone could logically know that if you nuke something, it's going to die.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he doesn't have some kind of secret like anti-venom or antifungal spray or something.
No, but he does have a nuke.
Yeah, it's more like he's the only one who knows how dangerous this is and what's going to
Yes.
happen if it gets out.
Yeah, because he tries to go through the proper channels to like get it taken care of when he finds out about it, but
Mm-hmm.
then nobody will listen to him or do anything. And I'm just like, this is the dumbest. Like that I didn't really think that was unrealistic
No.
because I know how like the government runs. But like I was like, why'd you even try? He's like, I just tried. I tried so hard.
Mm-hmm.
The end. I love that he's so old though. In the
Yes.
second part, I actually like really love that. People talk about how they're like, oh, I really want like old people to be characters in adventure stories and stuff. And I'm like, no, you really don't. And this book really highlights why you
Mm-hmm.
don't want that to be. Like, you think you want that because you're like, oh, they're all like experienced, they know exactly what they're doing. And it's like, yeah, but physically he's like falling apart. Like, that's an actual plot point that's a
Yeah.
problem for him later on, where he almost dies because his body literally just can't take it. Like, he can't fire a gun the same way.
If you want old people running around being athletic, just read vampire books.
Yeah, that's the same thing.
It is, Corrie. It is.
Oh,
You're welcome.
I think I'll keep it in mind.
So,
I did like all the characters though. I think I just gave it a 3 out of 5 because by the end there was something like really specific, and I'm not gonna be able to think about it for a while because I've been trying to think about it for like the last week and a half, where I was like, there was a specific question that I had when I finished this book, and it was about something with the plot, and I was like, it really took me out of it, and I cannot for the life of me think about what that question is, but it's been nagging me forever.
I mean, I did have some
Why I rated
questions.
it 3 stars because I ended up with a question that I didn't like, but I can't remember what the question is.
Well, I do think that it was difficult to believe that the fungus. I guess so. Basically, what happens when this fungus infects you is that you burst and release a bunch of spores. So,
Yeah,
like, that's what happened to all the people in Australia, which is terrifying. And especially
yeah,
when you're inside the scientist who dies, like, you're in her
yeah,
perspective when that happens, and that was, like,
yeah,
horrifying.
yeah.
But it basically made it sound like the fungus couldn't spread except when it did that, except that in the basement room it did spread just by like crawling around kind of.
Yeah, well, it
So like
knew that it could. The thing is that this is a better way to spread.
yeah, but it could have like gotten onto there were multiple scenes where they kind of skirt around it and it's like, "Oh, they didn't quite touch it." But I
Yeah,
feel like it was unrealistic to be like, "Okay, they really made it that whole time without touching anything that ever had the fungus on it."
yeah. No, I definitely questioned that as well because I was like, you can't just like run, especially when Tea Cake and great, I can't remember her
We should
name.
we should explain who they are.
My brain is gone. Where's my brain? It's
Naomi.
Naomi. Okay. When TK and Naomi come out, I'll explain who they are in a second. When they come out from setting the nuke, they take off their hazmat suits,
Mhm.
which is good because they had the fungus on their shoes and it was eating through the soles of their boots and it was
Mhm.
going to kill them. But then they just leave and they
Yep.
run out and it's just implied that they don't touch anything. And I'm like, how did they get in and they had to walk through the fungus, but then they got out just fine?
Well, I think because they got out in the hallway, like, and they went the other way from where the other infected people had gone.
I guess. But
But
then why
yes,
wouldn't they
it
have
still
come in that way?
visually
It's
it does
sus.
seem like a problem. Yeah.
It's so sus. Okay, so Tea Cake and Naomi are the two security guards. that are
Yes.
mentioned in the summary on the back.
And they're
That's it.
great, and I didn't read the back summary close enough either, so I was like really worried they were gonna die and didn't realize
Yeah!
they
I was extremely concerned. I, like, once they were introduced, and I was like, oh no, I like them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm reading a book about a killer fungus that kills people. And I was like, no!
How dare you do this? How dare you make me
I was
care about
like,
the characters that are in peril?
yeah, because when, like, especially when tea cake was first introduced, when they're first introduced, I was like, oh, okay, like, I don't know that I really care. But then after, like, just a couple of interactions with them, I was like, oh, no, I
Mm-hmm.
want them to live.
Because
Please.
basically, the subplot is that the two of them kind of get together.
Yeah, they're slowly falling for each other
Mm-hmm.
throughout the novel. Did you get acknowledgments in the back of your book?
I know you asked me about this, but yes.
So you have an actual like few paragraphs of acknowledgments?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I was just flipping through the book and that's why I suddenly thought of it again because my acknowledgement says acknowledgments TK. And that's all it says.
That's all it says?
Yeah, well, I did get an arc, so it's not a
Yeah.
finished copy.
No, it's got a whole list. It's funny
Okay.
because he talks about his son who's infectious enthusiasm.
Oh, what a dad.
Yep.
What a dad. I
So,
do
yeah.
love the timeline though.
You didn't or you
I
did?
do. I love it. I actually don't remember how much I enjoy books that take place in extremely small amount of time until I'm reading one. And then I'm like, "Oh yeah, I love this."
That's just because you read fantasy and sci-fi so much, and those are always really long time periods.
They are.
So it's just a
But
nice change of pace.
it is. And it's actually like kind of hard to do because
Mm-hmm.
it ends up dragging and I mean, I guess either both methods have their pros and cons, but you don't see things like people writing books that take place in really short periods of time very often. And I feel like maybe that's another reason why I like it because you have to be really good at it to make it work.
Yeah.
And I think this one really works. The last one, I have one on my shelf that I'm pretty sure takes place in a very short period of time, and it's called This Is Where It Ends. And
Mm-hmm.
it's about a school shooting. And I
Oh.
have that one on my shelf right now, and I haven't read it yet. But the one that I really remember liking was 13 Reasons Why, and that also takes place
Mm.
in like one extremely short period of time. It takes place in one night.
I think it's often like a murder mystery or thriller thing to have that short of a time period.
Yeah, because you have to have something that's going to keep your attention the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And I
So
think
you
that's
need it to be
why,
urgent.
yes. And I really like that. It's always ends up with a lot of tension, which is probably very much contributes to why I like it. I don't think that it's something that it's not something I seek out. And it's probably not something that I want to read like a bunch of books all at once.
Mm-hmm.
Cause it makes for a very fast read too though, cause you don't really realize how much you're reading, cause it's
Yeah.
taking place in like almost the same time period that you're reading it in.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're reading and you like read for an hour and then you're like, oh, an hour of time has passed in the book too. And it
Yeah,
makes it
like
feel so
if you
fast.
stayed up all night reading this, you would be about on pace.
Yeah, which is wild. And I kind of love that.
Yeah. Yeah, his strengths are definitely the characterizations because
Mhm.
he makes the characters really pop and gives them
Yes.
all something kind of unique so you don't like forget which one you're talking about when he switches perspectives.
Mhm.
And I also think he did a good job of like adding obstacles without it getting too cartoony, you know?
Yeah. He definitely
Definitely.
accomplished that moment where something happens in a book and you're like actually frustrated.
Yeah.
Not because it's like an unrealistic obstacle, but just because you're like, wow, no, this makes me so mad that like everything is against them. It's
Yep.
it's kind of a good feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just you just feel like it's unfolding in a logical way, a logical illogical way, which is just like reality, right? You know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
You're like, of course that would happen.
Mhm.
My favorite thing, by the way, so Trini is hard to like, I think, as a
Yeah.
character. She's a
Mhm.
lot hardened. She doesn't really care about people. So, But I love the fact that she stores a suitcase bomb in her family's house.
I did kind of like that, honestly.
I was like, of all the places I expected them to go, and for what I thought they were going to get, which I wasn't 100% sure yet when they do this reveal, it was
Yeah.
like, yes, this is 100% what she would do,
Yep.
and I have to respect that.
Yeah. That was such a good moment, though.
Mm-hmm. Roberto's like, why are we here? And she's like, here it is,
And he's
right
like,
on the world.
you stored a bomb in your like son's basement.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, yeah, it makes most sense. I was
Her
like, you're right,
family,
it does.
yeah, her family's sleeping upstairs, and they don't know
Uh-huh.
what's down there in all the boxes.
Nope. I just think it's like some of her stuff that needs to be stored. That's
Mm-hmm.
it.
So if anyone ever asks you to store anything, actually that seems to be the moral of the story. Just don't store things.
Yeah, just destroy them instead.
Yeah.
Drop a nuke on them.
Okay, I don't know that I would
For,
go that far,
for
but
legal reasons, that was a joke. Please don't do
yes.
that.
Hmm. We do not recommend
No,
suitcase bombs,
we do not. Please don't do that.
but we do recommend not storing things because you're just never going to want that stuff again as much as you think you will.
Yeah, that's actually kind of how they describe. So the fungus was held at the time, it was the very bottom level of a not super used military storage facility. So it's like sub basement 4. It's like deep in the ground and it was right by it's like built over an underground cold spring. And so they were like, okay, so that'll keep the temperature down. And then I can't remember what other precautions they took, but it's in this old storage, it's in a military storage facility. But then that storage facility gets, what's the word?
Bought? I don't know.
Well, no, it's not bought. It's like decommissioned, I guess, and then
Oh,
it's
yeah.
bought by a private company, and it's bought by a private storage facility.
Hmm.
And then they just build storage, and they don't know, like they don't know that sub basement 4 exists.
Yep. No idea.
So, and they like put a wall up over all of the sensors and stuff because there's like a wall that tells you because it was a military facility, so they had things that were like temperature sensitive, and the
Hmm.
only thing that's still temperature sensitive is the fungus. So the storage facility actually put up drywall over all of that stuff, and then it's just a storage facility. But it's funny that Charlotte talks about not storing things because that's exactly how the storage facility is characterized, is
Hmm.
that there's just a bunch of stuff there and nobody ever really comes back for it.
Yeah.
They just keep paying the monthly cost to store things. And I was like, yeah, that is absolutely 100% real life.
Yep.
It just is. It's also funny because they talk about how this storage facility, it's a little more expensive because it used to be a military storage facility. So it's actually built in a way that it could withstand like a lot.
Hmm.
And then at the end, spoilers, I guess we've already given lots of spoilers.
Yeah.
They do blow it up.
They do blow it up.
They blow it
And
up.
anyone who was storing anything in that storage facility never is going to get it back.
Nope, absolutely nothing. Nothing survived.
Oh.
So, which was the point. There were, okay, so like when we started reading it and I got a little bit into it, I did not realize how many casualties there would be
Yeah.
because there was like significantly more than I thought. Because for the first like probably third, I was just like worried about the two security guards more
Hmm.
than anything. I wasn't necessarily ever super worried about Roberto.
No, me neither.
I don't know. Like he was definitely in peril a couple of times, but I wasn't like hyper concerned about it.
He was ready to die though as well.
That's true.
So that kind of
Yeah.
acceptance just makes you as a reader be like, well, I guess if he dies, he died doing what he loved.
Yeah, I guess. So I was just worried about Naomi and Tea Cake, and then suddenly, very suddenly, it is like out of the blue, they introduce a third character, and then very soon after they introduce the third character, they introduce like 7 more people.
Hmm.
And I was immediately like, these guys are cannon fodder
Yep.
for sure.
Yep.
And I guess thinking about it now, that sort of annoys me. I know that it's a
Hmm.
thing, like you have to do, like you have to have casualties and stuff. But I'm just thinking, like, how much more tense could it have been
Honestly,
if they
and
had just had to deal with the first guy?
I agree. I think that having the first guy and then the old lady would have been enough for me.
Yeah, I don't feel like I needed all the rest of them. Because I feel like they added complication, but it wasn't like interesting complication and it
No.
wasn't like interesting tension. It was more just like, okay, I just have to kind of get these guys out of the way. You
Yeah.
weren't really, they weren't necessarily like a super clever or super smart.
Group.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's just kind of like, oh, okay, I guess I have to deal with these guys. They're just sort of annoying, I guess, more than anything else.
I mean, yeah, Griffin did have some potential as like a villain, and like he came the closest to actually escaping with some of the fungus on him, although he didn't know
Oh,
it.
yeah.
So like that tension did kind of serve a purpose, but there definitely didn't need to be that many. I think it would have been a
No.
little nicer to have a pared down just
Yeah,
but
I agree. I think that if this became a movie, I would probably watch it because I read the book, but it's not something that I would ever like go seek out.
mhm.
Because first of all, I don't really do zombies, and while this is not strictly like a zombie book, it is very zombie-esque.
Yes.
And then of course the cordyceps take over people's brains and makes them do things. So that's very zombie-esque, and I'm not into zombies. Also, I feel like this would end up being really gross to watch.
It would be very gross to watch. I do like zombie movies, so I might have been willing to watch this.
Mhm.
But for some reason, the fact of it being something else, like being parasitic, does make it worse for me than just like a virus.
Mhm.
I don't particularly know why. I guess I don't like the thought of like being controlled by an outside force like that.
Yeah.
So that part does freak me out a little more than just, oh, they're dead and they don't have a brain anymore and all they want to do is eat people. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I don't know how much I enjoy how smart he made the cordyceps. And I
Hmm.
think that the personification might have been a little bit to its detriment. I think that
Yeah.
I don't think it would work without that much personification, but you're in the fungus's head, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
fairly often by the end. And it got to the point where I was like, there's no way that the fungus is actually like thinking these things. It's not capable of doing that. Like no fungus
Hmm.
is going to be able to do this. And he has like a nod to that at some point, and I can't remember. I didn't mark it, but there's a point where while he's in the cordyceps kind of mind, he mentions like it was thinking as much as it could think. Like it's not.
Hmm.
He basically said, well, technically the fungus isn't thinking these things, but this is what it's doing, and blah blah. And I was like, okay, well, good nod, but like you're still doing it. You're still doing the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It didn't like bother me too much when I was reading it, but like thinking back on it, I'm like, I don't know. It got to be a lot by the end. I did really like the beginning part where you were kind of in a mix of the scientist head and the cordyceps, like sort
Hmm.
of thinking for her. And I really, really liked that dynamic. But the farther it went and like the smarter the cordyceps got, because it's constantly mutating, so it gets
Yeah.
smarter as it goes on. Like you're in its head more, and it just felt a little less realistic every time you got like deeper into that.
I guess the hard part with that is that we don't know how this fungus affects an ant or like what kind of thoughts ants have exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously we know they're not as complex as us, but it's like it's trying to imagine that but happening to a human, so then it kind of naturally scales up from there.
Yeah. I just think that it got a little bit too smart, I guess. Cause like at some
Yeah.
point, it's like it gets access to like three or four people all at once,
Mhm.
and two of them like immediately explode because it just like the growth happens so quickly. And then but then the other two there's like it was like, wait a minute, I gotta slow down
Mhm.
because I want to be able to spread. And I was
Yeah.
like, Like it wants to make the people do what needs to be done. And it was just kind of like a weird thing. And I was like, would it really like learn how to slow down that well and that quickly? I mean, obviously, like it's a super mutating fungus, but
It's hard to speculate about, but it does definitely stretch the limits of believability.
yeah,
And I also think that it's just like I said, it's that it comes back to that issue of like, did they really never touch it in the halls? Like,
yeah, that's
there's
gonna
a good
bother you
deal of
forever.
yeah, there's a deal of luck
Yeah,
that comes into play. Also, I
yeah.
had like a hard time picturing what the outside of this facility looked like. I don't know if that was just me or not.
I mean, that's a poor question to ask me because I have a hard time picturing anything in books.
Oh, good. Yeah, I don't
Like
know.
I can. I was just talking to a coworker about this the other night about how we read books, and I was like, yeah, I picture the characters all right, and it's like, but if you asked me to give you like a detailed description of them, I would not be able to do that. They are amorphous in my mind.
Yeah, me neither.
Like I know exactly what they look like,
And I'm actually
but
better
I
with
couldn't
spaces,
touch
and
it.
that's why it annoys me that I can't remember or I didn't get a good image of like what it looked like on the mountain or whatever.
Mhm. I just immediately forget those things. So I'm sorry, I can't like you're gonna have to find somebody else. If you would like to share your thoughts in the comments below, let Charlotte know what this
Yeah,
facility looks like or what you think it looks like.
yeah. It
Because
was
I
a
have no
very
idea.
humorous book. I'm just glancing at the back of it again. There's a lot of unintentionally funny moments and also obviously intentionally funny dialogue and such.
Yeah, I thought the dialogue was pretty good.
It was.
Dialogue is easy to get bogged down,
Mm-hmm.
but he writes really good dialogue, and it is really easy to tell when he switches perspectives. You mentioned that earlier,
Yeah.
but that is actually like difficult to do. And this is another thing that happens in adult fiction and not necessarily YA, but YA tends to switch perspectives chapter by chapter, and a lot of adult fiction will switch perspective mid paragraph or like
Yeah.
paragraph to paragraph. And I kind of really like the paragraph to paragraph switch more than the chapter by chapter. And I
Yeah.
think that I really like it a lot because if you're going to do paragraph by paragraph, you have to really have good voices for your characters. Like they have to be extremely distinct characters.
Mm-hmm.
And no offense to YA, but they do tend to be more simplified characters with very similar voices.
Yeah.
And I mean like writing voice and character voice, not just like how they sound or like it's kind of how they speak, like
Mm-hmm.
in the narrative. And I just think YA doesn't necessarily accomplish that as much.
Yeah.
And I really, really liked that in here because you could immediately tell when he switched from character to character, even if it wasn't really obvious. It was always obvious in some way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Even if there was no like page break or whatever to indicate it.
Yeah.
I also appreciated that he did not endanger any children because I
Oh, yeah.
mean it's fine if it's done well, but a lot of times it does just feel like they want to shoehorn in a child and put them in danger so they can up the
Yeah.
stakes or something.
Yeah, I actually had a moment where I thought maybe they would bring Naomi's kid into it for some
Mm-hmm.
reason. And I was
Yep.
like, that makes no sense. But I mean, they only sort of like they brought the idea of her in where she's like, oh, I have to do this for my kid. Like I
Yeah.
have to save the world for my child. But they never like brought her physically into the story really, which was
Yes.
good.
I was glad.
Oh, and on the subject of dialogue and characterization and stuff, I didn't know this because again, I don't read the back of the book once I start reading, and also I almost never read the author's note, but Charlotte did. And David Koepp is a celebrated American screenwriter and director, best known for his work on Jurassic Park, Spider-Man, Panic Room, and War of the Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, that makes a lot of sense. This reads exactly like an action movie.
It
If you
does.
like action adventure movies, you would probably really enjoy this book now that we've spoiled the whole thing for you. I think it'd still be a fun read though.
Now that we've spoiled it for you, yes.
I mean, I think if you like this stuff, you'd probably be fine. Like if you're like
Yeah.
me and you're not into like zombies even a little bit, you might not enjoy it now that we've kind of talked about a lot of the plot points. But I think that if you even kind of like zombies or you kind of like the contagion kind of stories, you'd probably still enjoy this book. And it's still a really fast read.
Yeah. It's a very quick read. I mean, I
I think,
probably could have read this in a day if I was like on vacation and doing nothing else.
yeah, I think I read it in like 3 sittings. And I think that the 3 sittings was more so because I was reading at work.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, like, I'm interrupted or, I have to get back to work to do those things. But I definitely could have read it in 1 sitting and it would have been fine.
Yeah, I think the
Very quick.
one thing that this book lacks a little bit is it could have done with a little more of an epilogue, but that's kind of nitpicking.
Yeah, I almost didn't like having an epilogue at all.
Mm. Yeah,
So
he
it's
either could have
sorry.
he could have either chopped it off right away or he could have done a more in-depth thing, and I think he kind of fell in an awkward area
Yeah, and
because
that I agree with that.
yeah,
That
he
assessment.
kind of like introduces they literally set off a nuclear bomb in the US in
Yes.
like a populated area,
Yes.
and that
But
he
they
doesn't
do it underground.
yeah, but he doesn't address any of that. Or
That's true. I
I
didn't
think
really think about that.
they would have gotten in trouble for that for sure,
I mean,
or at least
they
been like
kind of
interviewed
address it a little bit.
a
They
little.
say that the one trustworthy contact that Roberto had, like in, I guess I'm just gonna say the government because I don't actually know what she's part of,
Mhm.
but she like leaks the true story so that they don't get in trouble for it or whatever about like the fungus and stuff. And part of me was like, yeah, but I mean, nobody believed him the first time.
Exactly.
So like why are they suddenly believing him now? I mean, she can leak like all the old information and stuff. So I mean, I
They
guess.
could have at least said like maybe they had security footage or something, but I don't think he does mention that.
No, and how would they have security footage?
Well, maybe they were live streaming it somewhere where people who had stuff stored there could see. I don't know.
That's a stretch, but
It's definitely a stretch.
I get what you're saying. Yeah,
Yes.
I honestly, it was I would have been fine without anything. I would have been fine with them driving away and that would have been it.
Really?
Like, yeah, I would have been totally happy.
But
And
I
the
wanted
reason,
Tea Cake and Naomi to
no,
get together.
the reason that I would have been happy with that is that that is the movie ending.
I guess, yeah.
I mean, you can like have like Naomi and TK have a moment, like where the lights come back up and they're like, oh, walking in the park and talking to each other and be like, ah, I'm so glad we had that traumatic experience together. It drew us closer.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't need that at the end. Like in a
Yeah.
movie, I would have them end, but I would have them both sitting in the front seat together and then just like reach out and hold hands.
Yeah.
And that would be the movie ending. Where you'd be like, okay, they made it. And
So
that's it. And then you're just like, I guess they got together.
you wanted him to fully commit to screenwriting.
Yeah, I did. Except I'm not like the target demographic for this. Like I'm the target demographic, but I personally am not because I wouldn't go and watch this movie. I mean, like I said, I would now that I've read the book, but I would never like seek this out.
Yeah, and I also was thinking about how like I would react if I was in this book, and I was like, well, for one thing, I don't think I would be in any of these situations because I've already decided I don't want to store things, and
Yeah.
but if I somehow was involved in this, I feel like I would have run away pretty immediately. And if I was one of the security guards, I definitely wouldn't have gone down there.
No, me neither. They do a lot of backtracking, and I think that kind of annoyed me a little bit. Where they were like, "Oh, we've got to have them go down into the sub basement 4 and then they come back up and then they have to go back down there again." And it's
Yeah.
like I kind of hate that. I kind of like new settings
Well, I
all
don't
the
know
time.
that I was mad about the setting. It was more, I guess it was just the feeling of like, well, they already did this, and the first time was obviously the creepiest time. So,
Yeah, it was. And I think that maybe that's probably why is because they went down, it was very creepy, and then they had to go back down again and you wouldn't be able to get that creep factor
yeah.
going down the second time. I just thought of how it annoyed me that Naomi didn't get any of the fungus on her when she killed the rats.
Yeah.
Because I was like, how?
But
And
it
she
was
was
only on
like,
their tails and she was stomping on their heads, so.
and then they like were down there and it was like practically airborne. And I was
Yeah.
like, isn't it getting on the outside of their suits? Like, if they take their suits off, they're going to touch the outside of them probably.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
There's a lot of that. I
It's
guess
just
that's
glossed
just like
over.
yeah, I guess that's just something you kind of have to just forgive
Mm-hmm.
in here
Like
because
I don't know
that's a
how a
big
fungus
thing.
works anyway, so like I don't know how much contact you would need.
Well, it's implied that it's not a lot,
But
but
it was direct, so it's like if the fungus was still in the rats and not on the rats, like.
yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I guess that is just collateral damage
Yeah.
in the story. That it's just kind of like you just have to kind of believe that they never touched it.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause that's all you really have. Because we don't have necessarily always the best visuals, obviously, because it's a book.
Yeah.
I think that would be a lot harder in a movie, though, to convince people that they never touched it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I would love to see an alternate ending where like the fungus did escape.
That would just be The Last of Us. You could just go watch a playthrough of that.
Fine. I'll go watch a playthrough of The Last of Us
Because
and I'll
that's
think about it.
it. That's the cordyceps. They take over everything. I don't know if they infect all the animals in that, though.
Yeah, because this fungus is kind of equal opportunity. It seems like it could affect pretty much anything.
It actually seems like one of those funguses like do you remember watching Sahara?
Yeah.
Yeah, the red algae that they have
Mhm.
in that movie. It
Yeah.
seems like the same kind of opportunistic thing. In Sahara with Matthew McConaughey, they find out that there is a red algae that's growing in the Niger River. And if it gets to the ocean, what it does is it just spreads and it depletes the oxygen in the
Mm.
water. And so if it gets to the ocean, it would just, and it's very fast growing. So if it gets to the ocean, it would just basically kill all sea life, and then that would be it. And that's what the cordyceps feel like. Because
Yeah.
if the ocean died, like obviously we would all die. And so the cordyceps in this cold storage book is kind of similar to that, but it would just spread anywhere and everywhere because
Yeah.
it takes over animal life. But it seems like it's so equal opportunistic that it uses almost any material that it has to
Mm-hmm.
continue growing. So
Yeah,
it
it
would
can
literally
eat
just
pretty much
consume
everything.
everything.
Yeah.
So it consume plant life, it consumes, anything with carbon in it, essentially. Anything it's mostly organic. So really if this cordyceps got out, it would destroy Earth.
Yeah.
Like there would be nothing left because it would just grow until it killed everything and then maybe it would eventually die itself because it would run out of everything. But it seems like it can lay dormant for a long time.
Yeah. So
Although
then
it might not make it. It might
if
not make
anything
it to
land
Arctic. Sorry.
if anything ever landed on Earth after a takeover of that fungus, it would be screwed.
Yes. Although it might not make it to the very end of the Arctic for a little while. But
Yeah, it
see,
depends.
it raises the temperature though. So if it covered all the rest of the Earth, then it would raise the temperature and all the ice would melt.
Yeah.
It was very hot.
I mean, there is a continent under Antarctica, so that would still be there, but.
Yeah, but nothing's living on it.
Well, stuff could. I don't know. Are you assuming it can infect sea life too, then?
Yeah, probably could. It could probably figure that out. It really liked water.
Oh, yeah,
I
it
don't know
did.
how
You're
it would.
right.
I don't know how it would react. It's never like talked about how it would react to like salt.
But if
But I
it's
guess there's
fine
less.
eating like rubber, it's probably fine with salt.
Yeah, probably. That's probably not. The only thing that works on this is cold, and it
Yeah.
doesn't kill it. It just slows it down, or it just stops it from mutating until it's warm again.
I
And
can't
this,
believe that you brought up Sahara in two different podcasts. I
did I
just need
bring
to
it
say
up last time?
yes.
I love that movie.
I know you do.
I didn't realize I brought it up because of the water.
Yeah, everything ties back to Sahara.
Honestly, that movie's not even like that good. It's just like a mindless action adventure. It's better than the book, I'll give it that. But like the movie is great. I would highly recommend that. It's just a super fun watch.
You can read Cold Storage or you can watch Sahara. Two
Yeah,
very
they're both.
different things.
Honestly, I would put them probably on the same level of how much I enjoy them. Well, that's not true
Oh,
because I really like Sahara.
really like
I
Sahara.
gave this book 3 out of 5 stars, which is just average. It's not like I did enjoy reading a lot of parts of it. I just don't feel like it was so great,
I gave
you
it
know?
above average, I think, because I read it so quickly, and I haven't read anything in a while that made me want to read that quickly.
Oh, okay. See,
So,
I post all my. I think that posting all my star ratings has affected my star ratings in some way because now I feel like I want to be more consistent.
you're overthinking it.
Yeah, I do overthink it a little bit.
If you love someone, someone, yeah. If you love something, you gotta let the world know.
Yeah. But then what if everybody else in the world hates that thing and they change my opinion of it?
That's sad for you.
Yeah, it is. Well, anyway, I'm still happy with three stars for this book.
Yeah.
I just don't think it was like high literature
No,
or anything like that. It's
that's
still
not my
good.
standard.
I wish that we still carried it at my work because it is good and I would recommend it to people. Like I would especially recommend it to people who might just like be thinking about reading horror
hmm
because I would put this in the vein of horror, but it's like very accessible to people who might not be used to horror because horror has a very like specific feel,
Yeah,
very
this kind of
specific
eases you.
vibe. Yeah, because you get the first part that's like basically straight up horror, but then the rest of it is still like a lot of it is unsettling,
hmm
but there's so much comic relief and everything that it's just also very enjoyable.
Yeah.
And really, I feel like the true draw of this book is that you think about it afterwards, where you're like, oh, what if this actually happened?
hmm
That's more, I feel like that's the draw of it, the horror aspect of it, more than the actual book.
Yeah, imagining it actually happening is far scarier than reading the story of what happened in the story.
Yes. Well, did you have any other thoughts on it? Anything else? I feel like
No?
we talked about mostly what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah? You think of that question or no?
Nope. Overall, I would definitely recommend it to people. I don't know if I'd recommend it to like a hardcore horror fan. I did recommend it to one of my coworkers, and she reads a decent amount of horror, so I might actually just give her this one, give her my copy,
I
and
like
see
that
if she
idea.
likes it. I try to get rid of books after I'm done reading them,
Me too.
unless I like really love it, and even then, like I used to really want books that I loved and I wanted to keep them forever, but now I'm starting to reread books that I've had for a while and deciding whether I'm going to get rid of them or not. I don't
So,
like being a book hoarder.
yeah, there is a certain point where you're like, do I like this as much as I like room on my shelves for new books?
Yeah, that's the thing is that I don't want to hoard so many books that it's a hassle.
hmm
So, and if I don't feel the need to reread it someday, then I'm just not going to keep it. Because if I want to reread it someday, then I would probably know that after I finished reading it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to store it. If I really regret that decision later, I don't have any books that are so rare that I wouldn't be able to find them again.
Exactly.
There are some with covers that I keep because I like the covers on them, but there's only like a couple of those. So, any other thoughts, Charlotte? Are you going to keep this book or are you going to get rid of it?
No, I'm gonna get rid of it.
Okay.
It wasn't a 5-star book. Those are the ones I keep.
Oh, yeah? Do
Yeah.
you lend your books out to people if they're like 5 stars and you want to keep them?
I actually did lend out a Kelvin and Hobbes Treasury, Attack of the Killer Mutant Snow Goons,
Mm-hmm.
Deranged Killer Mutant Snow Goons. Sorry,
Yeah.
and I am a little bit nervous about it. I
Ooh.
trust my
Yeah.
coworker, but I'm like, it's just
Yeah.
great. And Bill Watterson he doesn't really allow anyone to do anything with his works, and I don't think they're in print anymore. So
I feel like I looked it up at some point. He stopped writing new comics
a long time ago.
a long time ago. But no, he doesn't. Yeah, he does. He never wanted people to like use his work elsewhere and stuff.
Mhm.
Calvin and Hobbes is great though. 10 out of 10. Would recommend.
Yeah. So hopefully she
I
gives the book back in one piece.
Yeah, I don't lend out my books anymore.
Mm.
I've been burned a couple of times.
I have two.
I just gave up on it. I'm just like, nah, you can just get it yourself.
Yeah,
And
libraries do exist.
yeah, and honestly, I don't really run into that many situations anymore where like I recommend a book to somebody and they're like not standing in a bookstore holding it for
True.
them to buy themselves.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't feel the need to lend out my books too often. And also, I know that people have really long TBR lists.
They do.
So I'm not going to lend you my book if you're not going to read it for the next 6 years because that's when it's going to get to the top of your list.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing too. It's like you got to commit for me to read it immediately. Pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is something I accidentally did a couple of weeks ago. I accidentally committed to reading a book. And I was like, oh, great. Now I have to actually read this in a reasonable amount of time. You know what? I did it.
It's
So
good for you.
it is good to have deadlines occasionally. All
Well, we
right.
can't tell you what we're reading next month because the answer is nothing.
Yeah, we're not going to read for December because we're slackers.
Mm-hmm.
Hate everything. I actually don't know if we've mentioned the actual months that we've been reading these because the podcast tends to be recorded and then put up several weeks later. So
Yeah.
it's not always the same. But we're recording this currently in November, about halfway through the month, and Charlotte does the editing on the audio and then I put the video together and then put it up. So if you're listening to this, comment what the day is.
Yeah. Tell us
What month
how
it
far
is
it is. Yeah.
because I don't know what it's gonna be when we publish this.
Maybe it'll be 2022.
I don't know, maybe I'll save it. I don't know. We don't have any fans yet, so it's cool.
Yeah.
I think our last podcast had like 3 views on it. Maybe
Wow.
one day one of these will go viral and then it'll be a good time. I should start making TikToks of them. All of my social media is going to be in the description down below. Charlotte doesn't have any social media except for a blog that she writes
Yep.
because she's better than all of us. And
That is not mine.
she has resisted the social media monster that exists in our world today. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's the way she lives her life.
It
It's
is.
disgusting. It's good. It's
It's
good.
it is. It's a lifestyle. I have fun.
She does. Probably more fun than anybody else does.
I enjoy my Snapchat, but it's very private. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, all my social media will be on there. I have a Facebook page and I have a TikTok and I also have a blog. I actually don't have any other social medias right now. I think that's it. That's all I've got because I deleted my Instagram. I don't have Pinterest. That's a big one right now, I guess.
you're doing
Pin-
good.
yeah. All right. Well, this is the least climatic ending that we've come up with for a podcast. I just keep saying, well, is there anything else that we
Oh
can get
no,
off topic?
fungus!
Yeah.
It's taking us up.
So, yeah, Charlotte gave it 4 stars. I gave it 3. It's a pretty good book. Read it if you like zombies and mushrooms.
That's
Okay,
it. Zombie
bye.
Bye.